Indications persist that a grand jury in New York is close to indicting former President Donald Trump. This would be unprecedented, and this could come as soon as tomorrow. And this is at the behest of a George Soros-backed Manhattan district attorney. The charge would involve a 7-year-old campaign finance violation that legal experts say reveals a clear weaponization of the prosecutor's office to target a political opponent. Republicans in the House of Representatives have already pledged to investigate. But with former President Trump already declared as a candidate for 2024 in the presidential race, what could this mean moving forward? And is this something we're just going to have to learn to live with, that depending on who's in control, they're going to use the levers of government and power against their political opponents? I mean, this is something like what you would read from a third world dictatorship, not from a constitutional republic. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Andy McCarthy. He was the former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York and is a senior fellow now at the National Review Institute. He joins us by phone. Andy, thanks so much for joining us.
Tony, thanks for having me.
Now, you've written on this topic from a legal perspective. Can you explain to our viewers and listeners, give them a quick sketch of the potential charges and how we got here?
It looks like from the reporting that what they are focused in, and this is the progressive elected Democratic prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, who's the district attorney of Manhattan, what they're homed in on is the non-disclosure arrangement that Trump arrived at with a woman named Stephanie Clifford, who is a pornographic actress who goes by the name of Stormy Daniels. It's important to note, Tony, that whether there was an escapade between the two of them or not is not really relevant to the case. It's not in any way decisive, because what's at issue is there was $130,000 which was given to Stephanie Clifford in connection with this non-disclosure arrangement. And the issue is how the Trump organization and Trump himself recorded or booked the reimbursement of Michael Cohen, who was the lawyer who paid this $130,000 on behalf of Trump, how they booked the reimbursement. And basically, they're looking at what they call false reporting of business records. And that's a misdemeanor in New York. Basically, they're saying that this was a loan that Trump reimbursed and that was accrued in 2016, and that the business records of Trump and his organization reflect that this payment as if it was ongoing legal fees that were paid over 12 months in 2017. So that's the falsity.
So let me ask you this question. This district attorney, Bragg, I mean, is this guy a tough on crime? I mean, is this the kind of stuff he's got? He's so aggressive on crime that he's digging into people's books to go after them?
No, he's the opposite of tough on crime. He's one of these classic progressive prosecutors who's actually anti-prosecution in orientation. But, I would say two things. First, it's the history of the progressive movement, particularly in its, late 20th century and early 21st century ascendancy and iteration, that it uses, basically it uses the levers of power as a penalty, and uses processes in a punitive way. That's sort of how it operates. And we've seen it in a bunch of different scenarios. And secondly, unlike prosecutors in the federal government, prosecutors in the state government, district attorneys, and also even state attorneys general are elected officials. They are not appointed, and they're not vetted by the Senate to make sure that they won't use their powers in a partisan way. So I think it's better to look at Alvin Bragg as an elected progressive Democrat in Manhattan than it is to look at him as a law enforcement official. His actions make much more sense if you see him that way.
So Andy, I know you're a law and order guy, like me, former police officer. You were an assistant U.S. attorney. We understand this thing doesn't work unless we have law and order. So I don't make, doesn't make me the best radio talk show host because I don't make wild claims. I'm very measured in what I say. But I can't see this any other way than being politically motivated. Am I correct or am I wrong?
You're correct, and this is the easiest way, I think, Tony, to explain this to people, at least that I've found, which is that anybody else other than Donald Trump would never be charged with this in Manhattan. The pattern of Alvin Bragg, as long as he's been the district attorney, has actually been the opposite of that. It's to take actual, real criminal activity by hardened offenders and basically deflate it from serious felonies down to misdemeanors or even not pursue it at all. Here, in Trump's case, he's taking something that's a trivial, stale misdemeanor at best, and whether he's got the proof of that remains to be seen, and he's trying to inflate it into a felony that could result in a 4-year prison sentence. So the only way you can explain this is politics.
In my opening remarks, I said I'm very concerned about these things that we see happening, how we even now have this select committee that is looking at the weaponization of our government, and I support it because we need it, because it's happening. We see it with the IRS. We've seen it with the IRS for a long time. We've seen it with the Department of Justice. Now we're seeing it kind of spread across the country. I mean, does this not concern you, Andy, that we could be moving to, I mean, a banana republic?
I am concerned because when I talk to people around the country, Tony, about law enforcement and national security, what has people on fire is the sense that we have a two-tiered justice system where the quality of justice a person gets depends on what their political affiliation is, their partisan affiliation, their ideological mindset. That seems to be more important than actual behavior to a lot of people. And I think the notion, and it's got to be more than a notion, it's got to be a reality, that we have equal protection under the law is critical to maintaining the rule of law, and we can't have a flourishing society without the rule of law. So I think, you know, the legitimacy of the criminal justice system in the eyes of the public depends on what they're eroding right now, which is the idea that all of us are treated the same before the law.
So as you just pointed out, if this was someone else, this wouldn't be happening. So is the former president being deprived of equal protection under the law?
I think he is, and I think he's going to have, it's unusual, you know, you have a law enforcement background, I have a law enforcement background. We know how infrequently, when people claim that they've been selectively prosecuted, we know how infrequently courts entertain that or indulge it. I think here this is the unusual case where he may have a very serious selective prosecution claim.
But now you, in your article, that folks, you can see it, you go to TonyPerkins.com, it's National Review online as well. You maintain that even though this charge is flimsy and, you know, probably is not going to hold up, prosecutors in other jurisdictions are lining up as well to come after the former president. I mean, it seems like just pouncing on this guy, using him as a, you know, I mean, it's almost a scalp for the left so that they can say to any other conservative who would dare challenge their world that we're coming for you too.
You know, I think the fact that they're going with this case first really undermines everything else that they may do, because the other cases that you mentioned actually involve behavior that I think is far more serious than what's in the Manhattan case. But I think people are going to form exactly the impression that you've just articulated, which is that this is really a witch hunt to go after one guy and get him on whatever you can get him on, and it's going to undermine the seriousness of these other cases if there is any seriousness behind them.
And that's not good either, because if criminal illegal activity was conducted, no matter who did it, I mean, I think you and I both would want to make sure that it is rightfully prosecuted, and
right.
I just think this makes this undermines everyone's confidence in our justice system.
I couldn't agree more. I can only hope that the fact that there's been delay here maybe suggests that Bragg is rethinking his position, but he seems to be doing all of the things that you would do, Tony, if you were a prosecutor who was winding up a grand jury investigation and getting ready to vote an indictment. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I'm afraid not. Well,
I think we'll find out very soon. Andy McCarthy, always great to see you and talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.